is the Automotive Reviews, and thanks for coming back to the 2021 Ford Bronco. And today we're going to talk about crawl ratios. Now, crawl ratios is the factor by which engine torque is multiplied before arriving at the wheel. Now, a large crawl ratio essentially provides the vehicle with more thrust to traverse steep obstacles without the driver having to apply more engine rev to build torque. And this is essentially what you see here. Not exactly Broncos though. However, this is just so you can get an understanding of what it means to understand the crawl ratio and when the crawl ratio is being used. So basically what's happening is that it allows the driver just to traverse steep obstacles without building up torque. And basically, this is what you see here. Now, this is what you see here is the Wrangler Rubicon, which is an awesome SUV. However, we're focused on the 2021 Ford Bronco. But this is just to see and to get an understanding of what it means to understand what crawl ratio means. This is basically what you're going to need to imagine traversing this obstacle. This would be a hell of a time, folks. Now, as you can see, you have the transfer case, the engine, and you also have the rear differential, all working with each other in order to go over steep inclines using the crawler gear. Now, this is the torque curve. Of course, this is the torque and this is the engine speed. And as you see, the engine speed being at 1,000, the higher the RPMs, the lower the torque. So the more is over here, the lower the torque is. And this is the torque curve in the engine. The engine acts, basically trying to come to an understanding of what the crawler gear means. So the higher the torque, the higher the revs, the lower the torque. Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Take a closer look at that too. And then you have it here. You have the wheel turning. You have here where the contact is. You have the traction. This right here definitely being the front right wheel. And this right here is just being the torque. And of course, so by looking at this mathematical equation, hopefully it gets you to understand where the torque, or how the torque is used. And again, back to the Ford Bronco. What a beautiful, beautiful SUV, folks. You're going to be traversing a lot of inclines, and so you're going to need that crawler gear. So if that's the case, then you know you should get the manual if you're going to be using a crawler gear to the full extent. Definitely will get the job done, folks. And crawl ratio being the factor by which the engine torque is multiplied before arriving at the wheel. Now, a large crawl ratio again essentially provides the vehicle with more thrust to traverse steep obstacles without the driver having to apply more engine revs to build up torque. So basically, this is what you see here, and what you see here is the Ford Bronco suspension system. And again, this is the concept Bronco that was at the SEMA. And as you can see, I believe this was a manual. It may have been a manual. No, it's actually an automatic gearbox. But definitely, this looks like the business, folks. Definitely looks like the business. Again, this is a gear ratio. As you see, the first gear is 4.71, the second gear being 3.13, and the higher the gear, the lower the ratio number goes. And the eighth gear being the higher, in reverse, actually being 3.30. And this is the available drive ratios on the base, the Big Bend, Black Diamond, and the Wild Tracks, Badlands, First Edition. And as you can see, the manual, and then you have the auto, and then you have the Sasquatch package. And the Sasquatch package itself having the higher drive ratio number, and that is to 1, folks, like 4.70 to 1, and the manual being 4.46 to 1, and the auto being 3.73. And of course, the auto has 10 gears, while the manual has 7 gears, with the 7th gear being a crawler gear. This is a transmission. And this right here is the manual transmission. And as you can see, the crawler gear being 6.588 to 1. And you see that, of course, the automatic doesn't have anything like the crawler gear. It doesn't have the higher number, which means that the torque is turning 6.588 times equals 1 revolution. So the tire is going to turn 1 revolution, and this is going to help it to climb the steep inclines. Now, in a 4-wheel drive vehicle with a 2-speed transfer case, engine torque first gets multiplied in the transmission, then in the transfer case, then in the differential. It's also in the torque converter on the automatic equipped vehicles, but we don't count on that. So a crawl ratio is simply defined as the product of those gear reductions. So it's the product of the gear reduction. And as you see here, the gears, first you have to say in a 4-wheel drive vehicle with the 2-speed transfer case, the engine torque first gets multiplied in the transmission. So the transmission being here, and it's being multiplied first, then in the transfer case, then in the differentials. It's also now when you have an automatic, of course, it's in the torque converter. And the crawl ratio is simply defined as a product of those gear reductions. So basically, there's a reduction that's going on through each one, and then that's how we get to the crawler gear, the crawl ratio, not the crawler gear, but it's the crawl ratio. The crawl ratio, which helps us to climb the steep inclines. Now, the manual transmission first gear ratio is, say, 5.13. Let's go back and find this table of the manual transmission. Here it is right here. Now, the manual transmission first gear is 5.13. Multiply that by 4:1 low range ratio and the 4.1:1 axle ratio. And if you do that on the Rubicon, and you arrive at a crawl ratio of about 84:1. Now, in a non-Rubicon trim with a 3.45 axle ratio, and the basic command track, which is 4x4 system with a 2.72 range, that drops to 48. Now if you do the math, that's what it comes down. It comes down to 48. And then again, this is just off the chain. Just what a sight to see and a sight to behold. And right now what we're doing, looking for, and as we go through here, we're looking at some, again, we're looking at the suspension system. And I'm basically looking for the chart. And I believe this is not the chart, but we're looking for the transmission. If we have a transmission chart, here it is right here. Now that is not it. This is it right here. The transmission for the 6-speed with overdrive. We have the availability standard 3.6 liter V8. We're talking about the Jeep here. And synchronized in all 4 gears. In reverse, we have the multi-rail shift system with a top-mounted shift lever. We have the gear ratio being in first gear 513, second gear 2.63, and as you see, the first gear has the highest number, and the reverse having the second highest. But then that final drive ratio being 3.45, which is standard 3.73 optional, and 4.10 on the Rubicon. So you see this, and so it's a lot to think about, but I just wanted to get some kind of understanding, some kind of clear understanding of what the transmission for this Rubicon is all about, with the 6-speed with the overdrive. And again, that's the Jeep doing its business. And again, the engine, the transfer case, and you hear the rear differential. So it has to go through all of these in order to get to the ID number. Now, when it's the front, you know, when it's the front wheel that's doing all the traction, it still has to go through those numbers, because it has to go through the transmission and then go to the wheels. So it's a lot to think about here. You have the 4-low range as well. And again, it's worth mentioning that the crawl ratio does not equate to better. I mean, as tire size factors in, you want a larger ratio for bigger tires to get the same thrust. And also in the certain crawl ratios, you achieve diminishing returns. So it's a lot to think about. Now, the Ford Bronco automatic crawl ratio range is 48-68, and the Jeep Wrangler automatic crawl ratio range is 44-77. And the Ford Bronco manual crawl ratio range, which is off the charts, you're talking about 80-95. So boy, that's intense. The Jeep Wrangler manual crawl ratio range being 48-84. So again, the Ford Bronco is on top of this, folks, especially in the manual transmission. If you're going to be doing steep inclines, and you're going to be doing a lot of that, and you one of those guys that want to live their life on the edge, you're definitely going to have to get that manual. Again, it's A Automotive Reviews. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this cleared up some understanding as far as what the crawl ratio means. It's a lot to study, and the more you study, the brighter you're going to become at this. And guys, enjoy your Broncos. Sooner or later, if you ordered it, you know it's going to be coming, you know, in the spring of 2021. And I tell you, that is right around the corner. Until then, get outside, get some fresh air, enjoy life. Much love. Remember, like, share, and subscribe.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more interesting videos.